Good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm Danielle Dory, the Director of Program Operations here at the Chamber. Thank you all for joining us today. I'd like to help virtually introduce all of our attendees. I hope you all take advantage of the chat functions to say hello to your fellow attendees and share your thoughts throughout the program. Please enter any questions for our guest speakers in the Q&A feature on the right hand of your side screen. And lastly, this program is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube page next week. After over a year and a half, we are still facing both the largest health pandemic and movement for equity that we have seen in our lifetimes. Many businesses and industries have had to close down at times, but when it comes to the justice system, access for all is imperative, and closing is never an option, even in the most tumultuous of times. Today, we will hear from the powerful woman who has been keeping the wheels turning on our justice system. Chief Justice Kimberly S will talk about her path to one of the highest judicial appointments, how serving during this most recent racial reckoning has shaped her legacy, and what her vision is for the future of the Commonwealth. With that, I'd like to give a huge thank you to our Women's Network sponsor, PwC. Their support and partnership allows us to bring you this programming today. Now, I'd like to welcome Tricia Govender, Director, Financial Services, Risk and Controls at PwC, to introduce today's featured speakers. Thank you for joining us, Tricia. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Danielle. I'm really excited to be here today. On behalf of PwC, it is my absolute pleasure today to introduce our featured speaker, Chief Justice Kimberly S. and our moderator, Courtney B. Scrubbs. Chief Justice Kimberly grew up locally in Peabody, and after attending undergrad at Georgetown University, she returned to Boston, completing law school at Harvard University. Chief Justice began her legal career as a law clerk on the Massachusetts Appeals Court. She worked at Mintz-Levin before serving as an assistant United States attorney in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston. She then was a university attorney for Harvard University in the General Counsel's Office and later served as director of the Community Values Program at Harvard Business School. She is a distinguished and highly respected leader who inspires women, people of color, and many more communities across the Commonwealth and beyond. Chief Justice was sworn in by Governor Charlie Baker as the 38th Chief Justice on December 1st, 2020, becoming the first Black woman and the youngest in over a century to hold this prestigious position. We are so excited to have you here today, Kim. Now, leading today's conversation, we are thrilled to be joined by Courtney B. Scrubbs. Courtney is currently on the Life Sciences Council for Axiom, where she provides commercial contracting, negotiation support, and business partnership to Fortune 500 life sciences and pharmaceutical companies. Courtney is also a recent past president of the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association. She is a 2018 Emerging Executive Pinnacle Award winner and a Chamber of Commerce Boston Future Leaders graduate. She continues to be recognized for her leadership, philanthropy, and for her many volunteer hours devoted to advocating for and empowering youth, women, and people of color domestically and abroad. Courtney is passionate about tackling issues such as gender parity in the boardroom, exclusion politics, and strives to help cultivate empathy and belonging for all. We are truly honored to have you both here today, and I'm so looking forward to the conversation. With that, I will turn it over to you, Courtney.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here with all of you today, and especially with the woman of the hour, Chief Justice Bud. Chief Justice, how are you?
I'm great. It's really great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's jump right in. As was mentioned in your bio, right on December 1st of 2020, you became the 38th Chief Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court. And we've noted also that you are the youngest in over 150 years, and also the first woman of color to be appointed Chief Justice. Wow, what incredible accomplishments and milestones that you hold. That must also translate into a lot of pressure, right, to shine and perform right, of course. So the role itself, as we noted, is such an accomplishment. And it's, you're earning this prestigious position has meant, I'm sure, a lot to you and a lot to those who have watched you sort of matriculate through your career over the years. And it is also very significant for the legal community and for those of us like myself, young, still sort of young, baby lawyers, maybe not a baby lawyer anymore, but women in the profession, young Black women in the profession who face a significant difficulty above and beyond just what it means to be a lawyer. And so to see you rise to this position means so much to us as well. So I want to start off by asking you, what does it mean to you to hold this position? What is the significance to you? Do you feel as though you're a role model for women, for communities of color across the state and the nation? What has this achievement meant to you?
Thanks, Courtney. It's funny when Governor Baker announced that he was nominating me. I think one of the questions was, what does this mean? You're the first Black woman who, will potentially hold this position. And my answer was, I'm just trying to get my arms around the fact that I will be holding this position, potentially. And so for me, I've always been Black. And so I was going to do whatever I did as a Black person, right? And the fact that I'm the first Black woman here I started in 2020 says less about me personally, I think, than it does about society, right? This is the oldest continuously running appellate court in the Western Hemisphere. It's over 350 years old. And I'm the first, which that doesn't say a lot good, frankly, about where we sit. But it's really good to be here now. I really feel good about being here and hopefully being able to make a difference.
Absolutely. I really appreciate your point about, your appointment being really a reflection of not just your accomplishments and your expertise and the gravity of your positive and inspiring reputation in our community, but also a reflection of the legal community in Massachusetts and in the nation. That's such a salient point. Okay, so let's dig in. Today, for everyone that's listening, what I'm hoping to accomplish today is to make sure that we leave this discussion more clear on what it is that the Chief Justice does as sort of the governor, the facilitator of our judicial system within the Commonwealth, but also to understand the woman behind the title, what makes her so special, and possibly why she was appointed to this position, why she means so much to so many of us, even before she rose to this rank in her career. So let's start off by recognizing that you've been immersed in the law from a very young age, right? Yep. Your father, who is a mentor of mine, but I always hear is sort of the mentor of the city, everyone's mentor, Mr. Wayne Budd, devoted his career to the practice of law and even served as a United States District Attorney. Has this impacted you? And better yet, I know it has. So let's say, how has this impacted your decision to become a lawyer and the type of lawyer and leader that you've become?
So you're right. I've been able to sort of have a front seat to my dad's career and see him progress from being a principal in a small firm, but the largest minority-owned firm in New England. I had the opportunity to work there in the summers, grabbing, files and doing, projects and just having a chance to be immersed in that environment. So I had that opportunity. That definitely impacted my decision to become a lawyer. It's hard to know whether I would have done it without having him to look to. It's hard to imagine having done it, though, frankly. But that's what I had my whole life.
Right.
when I hear, obviously, you just mentioned it, he's been a mentor to you. I hear that all the time. He's been a mentor to so many people. And whenever people come up to me and say, oh, Wayne Budd, and then they go on to talk about how he has helped them in some way. People at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I got to the U.S. Attorney's Office after he had left, but people who were there when he was there would always remark how he knew everyone, he spoke to everyone, he knew everyone's name. And, he's a great lawyer, he's very smart, but he's just a good person. And so it was nice to have that as a model as well.
Absolutely. I would agree 100% with him just being an awesome person and in particular a man of integrity. And as you mentioned, I'm sure that example has impacted you as far as your character, right? Beyond the profession, whatever profession you would have selected, I'm sure that example has really impacted who you've become as a woman. So let's go into, you mentioned the importance of immersion in the law. And we both, I think, understand how important it is for young people to be exposed to different professions early on to help inform the decisions they make with where they're going to go with their lives, right? And you mentioned very clearly, you're not sure if you would have chosen to practice law had you not been immersed, but of course you were immersed. And so what else did you really see at that level? I guess you could have hated it and said, this is something I don't want to do.
Right.
So beyond choosing the law and beyond the influence of character from your father, being a good person, how else did you shape sort of the vision for your career? Was becoming a Supreme Court, Mass Supreme Judicial Court justice always something you were considering? Was it just making it to the bench? Talk to us about your vision for your career, sort of at the outset.
So first of all, I want to just point out one of the things that my dad always said to people who were potentially interested in the law, and that I heard all my life, is that going to law school just gives you a lot of options. And there's so many things that you can do, right, as a lawyer or having a law degree. And so that was something in the back of my mind. And I have to tell you that never did I ever imagine that I would be the chief of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court. I mean, that definitely was not in my head when I graduated from law school. I had no inkling or desire to be on the Supreme Court at all. I didn't even think about being a judge until a couple of months before I actually applied. So, and when I look back at my career, I didn't necessarily have a plan, but I feel like I was lucky in that I had some opportunities and chose to take those opportunities and get what I could out of those opportunities. And by the time I did apply, what was great was I had a lot of things to pull from, a lot of experiences to pull from, to say, hey, I've done criminal work, I've done civil work, I've done in-house, I've worked at a big firm. So I was able to take what I had and present it. And so, yeah, there was no special path. And I think for those who, like me, don't necessarily have a path in mind, and even for those who do have a path in mind, things often don't go the way you think they're going to go. You take what you have and you pull it together and you present your best case, so to speak.
So with that point, such a great point and so important. I mean, I see that reflected in my life and career. When I started off in law school, never would I have imagined that I would be doing, I don't even know that I knew about this type of work at the outset, that I'd stand at the intersection of medicine and law in this way, but I'm so grateful for it. And so really on point there. So let me now bring that into our next question. And that is, what are your recommendations for women who are navigating career transition and pivot? Since you mentioned you pivoted quite a few times, and that ultimately turned out to be very beneficial for you when considering the judicial seat. But what kind of advice and recommendations would you give to women who are sort of 10 years back or 15 years back in their career journey and are considering making these adjustments off of their plan or with no plan at all?
Right. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I heard as I was, making my way as a younger lawyer, it was a Chamber of Commerce talk by then, I want to say she was Chief Justice of the SJC, Margie Marshall. And she was giving a talk, and one of the things that really struck me was she said that you don't have to go sort of in a straight, a continuously ascending line, that you can step off the, step off of this treadmill and do other things. And so those words were important to me when I was trying to figure out how to navigate having two young children working more than full time. My husband was working more than full time and traveling. And we were just trying to figure out how to make things work, and because they were not working. And I ended up deciding to step away from the law. And that's when I went to work for Harvard Business School. And it was a great job. It was a very flexible job. I was able to work 5 short days so it was 80%. I was able to pick up the kids from school, take them to afternoon activities, be there for dinner. And it was a choice that I made with some trepidation, because it meant leaving the practice of law and not knowing when or if I would return to it. But it was a choice I felt like was right for me at that time, for my family and myself. And so it was a scary move, but it ended up working out fine. It ended up working out better than fine, because I was able to do what I needed to do for my family. And when I was at Harvard Business School, one of my duties was to be the administrative person who handled disciplinary issues. And so when I was applying to become a judge, I was able to talk about my quasi-judicial experience in that role. So it all worked out great, but I didn't know at the time that it would. Right. And I think back about how difficult it was as a mother of 2 small children. The burden often falls to the mother to make sure that they are creating a safety net and nothing falls off into the fire. And so it was just very difficult. And I imagine maybe 50 years from now, we will be looking back as a society and saying, how were women able to do that? Why were they forced to do that? So I hope we can do something about that.
So you speak about an issue that's very hits home for a lot of people, is near and dear to a lot of people. I'm sure even folks who are on this call who are listening in. And that is a couple of issues. One, you talked about this reflection 50 years from now and saying, are we doing what we should to support mothers and families and children, and making it feasible for women to really realize career accomplishments that we need them to, right? Because you bring a voice that's necessary in the judiciary. So it's not just for you, but it's for us. How can we make sure we benefit from the voices of mothers by making it feasible for them to be successful in their careers, right? That's such an important question for us to just think about, hold on to, and be reflective of. So thank you so much for interjecting your role as the mom into this discussion, even at this early point. And maybe we'll circle back to that a little bit further. I'll just take one little moment. We are getting great questions in the chat. Please feel free to continue to submit your questions. We have a couple of other prepared questions that I want to ask our Chief Justice, and then we'll turn right into the audience questions. So just give us a few minutes and we'll get to them all, I promise. Okay, so the next question I wanted to ask you, Chief Justice, is about your leadership style. Okay, so we've noted that curiosity is a part of how you've approached your career, and it has benefited you at this point because you've had so many wonderful experiences to reflect upon. But I also know, just from knowing a little bit about you before today, that you're a particularly compassionate woman as well. And we benefit from that as a Commonwealth because that compassion and curiosity is reflected in the work that you do. So outside of these two factors, tell us a little bit more about who you are as a leader.
So, to be frank, I'm not sure that I ever have really considered myself a leader. I can tell you that I know for myself that I do not have all the answers, and just knowing that keeps me out of a lot of trouble. And so I think what I try to do is be collaborative, and I do not act like I know everything. I want input, and I want to know what all of our options are for any particular issue that we're dealing with, and then try to figure out what the best option is in the circumstance. And I can tell you for sure that that's how we operate, how I operate with my colleagues on the SJC. Whatever problem we are trying to figure out, whether it's something in a case or some sort of administrative issue, the seven of us working together come up with a pretty good solution. And I'm so grateful that I've got colleagues that are very smart and very dedicated, and we just are able to work well together. And I can only do my job well if the people around me also believe in what we're trying to do and come wanting to do that,
Excellent, excellent. So what I heard from that is that you're collaborative at your core. You're collaborative, maybe even consensus-oriented sort of leader, that really looking out for the people you serve as a leader, because you very much sounds like a servant mindset, service mindset in your leadership style. And it's been said that the best leaders sort of come from that same place, and that's been my experience through my career as well. So I appreciate that. Okay, so let's get into the work that you do as Chief Justice. Tell us more about what you do, mm-hmm. but how in particular you are keeping the wheels of justice moving in this unprecedented, odd, weird pandemic time.
Yeah. So to start, I came on as an associate justice and basically focused on the work of the opinions, the opinion writing. So we hear cases and we decide how they're going to come out, and then you write the opinion to explain, how you get from point A to point Z in a way that everyone can understand, and hopefully will leave readers saying, oh, well, of course that's the answer. I'm not sure why we were fighting about this because it's clearly laid out right here. It's very logical. We get it. So that's the basic job that I had as an associate justice before I became chief. And it took a while to get the hang of that, but I feel like I did over the past 4 years or so. And now I've got 3 additional jobs as chief. And those jobs are, 1, being responsible for the judicial branch, right? Making sure that the courts are working properly, and with the administration and all of that. Another one of the jobs I have is being the face of the judiciary, and giving talks and doing things like this, and making sure that the community knows that we're here and what we're doing, and that we're important, because the legal system is very important, and it's important that the residents of the Commonwealth have faith in our legal system. And then finally, I have to think about and then make progress towards figuring out what I want to leave here, sort of as a legacy. What is it that I want to be able to look back at and say, well, we were able to accomplish that. So, yeah, three more jobs on top of the one that I had, and it'll take me a couple of years, I think, to feel comfortable in doing all those things.
Understood. And quite a bit of responsibility above and beyond that of the associate justice role that you noted at the outset.
I'd say though that, it's not just me who is in charge of the judiciary, right? It's the SJC. So it's myself and my colleagues. And I can't tell you how supportive they have been. They are right there ready to do the things that need to be done to make sure that people know who we are and that we care. They take on special projects. So they're not just doing the opinions either. We are all working towards making sure that, we've got the best legal system that we can have.
Ultimately a team effort across the board, and that's wonderful to hear. Okay, so let's pivot a little bit more. We started into understanding your technical role, the responsibility of being a Chief Justice, and you spoke a bit about the legacy that you want to leave, right, when you wrap up this career 50 years into the future. So talk to us about any necessary structural changes that you've observed, things that you say we definitely need to change in our courts, especially in the climate now where we're facing this racial reckoning.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's just a lot. And I feel good about being in a position to be involved in trying to come up with some solutions, but it's got to be multifaceted, right? The court is one place where we can do some work, but work has to be done in a lot of different areas as well. And so we can focus on what we can do, and perhaps also point out, where other things can be done. I can tell you that obviously this was equality in the justice system, racial equality, or trying to work towards that, is something that my predecessor cared very deeply about, Chief Justice Gantz, and it's something that I obviously feel very deeply about as well. And, if it was something that could be done easily, it would have been taken care of already. But it's important to have people who are committed to making change in places where they can actually affect that change. I can tell you that each of our trial courts are doing things. And this was precipitated by the Harvard study that came out a year ago, just before Chief Justice Gantz died, that talked about the racial inequalities in our criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. But each of the courts have looked at what things they can do, small things and bigger things, that they can do to make a difference. And one of my colleagues, Justice Winlet, has organized quarterly meetings with the trial court chiefs and the chief of the appeals court and the commissioner of probation, talk about what initiatives they have started and how they're going. And that serves two purposes. One, to let the justices know what's going on in the court system, but also to let the trial court chiefs know what each other are doing and be able to borrow from one another. Right. So we actually have a pretty, the district court has a pilot program that they've started in a couple of different courts where a assistant district attorney will take a look at a charge before it is filed to see if the charge is commensurate with what occurred. And it's been in place for a couple of months, and it's actually been making a difference, so that charges that are, because what will happen is once the charge is set, that sort of tells you where the case is going to go from there. And the higher the charge is from the beginning, the worse outcome in the end for the person who has been charged. So somebody looks at the charge to say whether that's actually appropriate, and it will either be reduced or it may be referred for diversion. And that's something that's actually making a difference. And it's something that they can take to other district courts. So at any rate, we're trying to do concrete things that will make a difference.
Right. Right. That's so clear. You are identifying real issues and trying to find ways to address them directly that result in impact on the outset, and then also being collaborative enough to showcase those efforts so that others can model them and implement them across the board. And that is a model I've seen in other spaces, in other communities, in other industries where there is a public service sort of mission that it's like, you know what, you're doing something great. Let me better understand how you're doing this, because we'd like to see similar outcomes in our community. One in particular, if I can mention, is I think everyone has heard of the Dads on Duty recently, right? And that was actually at my alma mater high school in Shreveport, Louisiana. Yeah. So I'm so proud of those guys. But for those who haven't heard, the group of dads who noted there was a lot of fighting happening at a school and decided they're going to go and stand watch during certain points during the school to just change the atmosphere. And it has been truly impactful. A simple solution, right? Simple solution, not a particular expertise needed, not a lot of money necessary, but very impactful. And so I very much appreciate that that's your approach, Chief Justice, and the court's approach as you share the responsibility and the kudos and accolades for the work that's being done, appropriately so, as a good leader would. So let's move on to another question related, but puts a little bit of onus and accountability on us. And that is, what can we do? What can those of us in the business community do help to further, I guess, these objectives, help to see the necessary changes in the court system that you're pointing to and that we've been pointing to as a community?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of different things that the private sector and the business community can do with regard to support for the court system. We've gotten great support from the legislature, but I think it's important for them to know that the private sector, that the business community appreciates and understands the importance of our court system. And so to the extent that the legislature knows that the community believes in and needs the court system, that can only be helpful, right? One of the things that we are actually working on now is there's a IT bond bill that the legislature is going to take up that will allow us to sort of give us an infrastructure to get to the next level. We don't really have right now the ability, a full ability to do electronic filing and the data collection and all of the things that we need to be able to do to make sure we know what's going on and to just follow things and to make things easier for court users. So that's something that the legislature is going to be taking up actually tomorrow. And I'm going to be at a committee hearing on that tomorrow morning. So, I mean, there's all sorts of things going on, but sometimes I get the sense, and it's no one's fault because everybody's doing their own thing, but people don't necessarily think about the court system. It's just there. It's there for you to use if you need it. Quite frankly, nobody comes into court necessarily happy to be doing so. It may be a criminal matter, it may be a civil matter, you may be being called for jury duty, but nobody's happy. But when you think about it, it's so important that we're there. I mean, right. The rule of law is so important, and I think we take it for granted. Mm-hmm. And, I think we're seeing more and more that we really shouldn't be taking it for granted. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's something important to kind of chew on a bit, taking it for granted that it's going to be there and that it's going to work and maybe perhaps without our specific attention or contribution, that it's just going to be there. Right. That's a really important point for us to hold on to. Okay. So the time is ticking and the questions are building up. So I'm going to ask maybe two more questions, and then we're going to open it up for our Q&A from our audience. So here's the second to last question. As you continue leading in your role, what are some other ways that you are advocating for those who need it most? And where have you seen the most success so far?
So I think that one of the things that has been great about being here is, we've got the SJC has several different committees, one of which is the Standing Committee on Pro Bono Services. That's something that I was very involved in prior to becoming chief. And, we were just able to, using the SJC, the prestige of the SJC, we were able to just sort of spread the word about how important pro bono legal services is. We go to law schools to try to encourage pro bono legal services beginning as students, and encourage lawyers to continue to do that work as they go on in their legal careers. Lawyers have an expertise that people need, and not everybody is able to afford. And so that's one of the things that I have been working on and think is very important. And we're getting the word out. We have an annual pro bono award ceremony every year. This year it was virtual, but we celebrate and make sort of hold up certain people who have really gone above and beyond with their pro bono work. And it's very inspiring and hopefully gets others to do the same thing. So that's just one of the things. And I'm no longer the representative from the court, but my colleague, Ellie Cipher, currently does it now. And I think it does make a difference.
Okay, I was on mute there for a second. Yes, so very familiar with that pro bono recognition program. Noticed that we had at least one MBLA leader that was recognized recently.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's exactly. Okay, great. And to also push the importance, I know for some it may be easier because pro bono, meaning without specific compensation. There are those who have the wherewithal to be able to do more pro bono and those who don't. But I think your point is well taken that it's important for us to try to do what we can. And I think the program recognizing those who have gone above and beyond is super important, and it's effective, right? Because as we see our colleagues lifted up, it's a nudge for us to get in the trenches as well. So excellent work there. Okay, so our last question, and then we're going to our Q&A. And the question is, what is your vision for the future of the Commonwealth? And what is the legacy you're hoping to create for young women, specifically young women in the law, who look to follow in your footsteps?
So, it's been still less than a year since I've been in this position. I'm still finding my way with a lot of help from my colleagues and from the SJC staff here who have been immensely helpful and have a lot of expertise. So I'm still finding my way, and it's hard for me to say right now, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. As I've said before, I am very interested in racial justice. As a woman of color, as a mother of two Black young men who definitely are not little boys anymore and will not be perceived as little boys. It's important to me and my family. It's important to all of the people of color who have been victims of all sorts of violence, who have gone through the system and perhaps not have gotten the treatment that people who are not people of color have gotten. It's just important to me that our system work in a way that's fair for everyone. And, clearly the system is not perfect. And again, it's not going to happen right away, but I really am committed to making a difference there. As far as, my position, if being in this position gives people a chance to look and say, oh, geez, maybe I could do that, I'm thrilled. When I was applying to law school, the only reason I applied to Harvard was because at the law school fair, I was in DC, at the law school fair, there was a Black woman behind the table. It's the only reason why I walked up there. So I know for a fact that makes a difference. And if I can make that kind of difference for somebody, I'm thrilled.
And know that you already have, and that you are, and hopefully even on this call today, on this presentation, you're doing that right now. So that is a goal achieved already. Okay. All right. So the time has come. We have quite a few questions. I'm going to try and address them. Some of them that are similar, I may lump them together so that we can get through everything. So Chief Justice, we'll try to take these in rapid fire. So there's about 17 minutes left. Okay. So the first one being, what advice do you have for those who are interested in pursuing a law degree and studying law in depth? They're not exactly sure what career path they want to pursue. And that's a very common occurrence. So what would you say to someone in that position?
Right. So I absolutely did not know what I wanted to do with my law degree when I went to law school. I just figured that it would be helpful to me. You have to learn how to think critically and be able to marshal arguments and be able to communicate well. And all those things are things that can help you in anything that you want to go on to do. So don't feel like you have to know what you want to do with your law degree. And you've got, like I said before, you've got a lot of options. There are a lot of different ways to practice law, and there are a lot of different ways to use your degree without practicing law. So I would not worry at all about not knowing what you want to do. When you're in law school, you'll get to choose, you'll get to go to different choose different classes after your first year and see what you might like. And I would suggest that you take advantage of the opportunity to do internships and clinicals so that you can actually practice and see if you like that type of work.
Awesome. I've always heard the saying that you focus on skill development and know that you can develop the critical skill in lots of different areas. So just focus on developing skill. Okay, awesome. Next question. How did you deal with recognizing times where you may be complacent in your career, if you experienced that? How did you deal? The question is, how did you deal with recognizing times where you may have been complacent in your career, if you've experienced that at all? And how did you deal with the challenge of accepting the risk of moving on from a place where you were complacent into something that may be more challenging, but also unknown to you?
So I would say there were times. I mean, so when I was at Harvard Business School, like I said, it was a great job. It was a flexible job, and it just made it worked. But at some point I was sort of like, okay, well, what am I going to do next? And it was sort of I wasn't sure what it was that I was going to do next, if anything, and when that might be. For me personally, I got sort of a shot in the arm when my law school classmate, Barack Obama, became president. And it was at that time I said, okay, well, he's now president of the United States. What am I going to do? And so that was actually when I decided to apply. It was something I had not considered it before. I felt like it was, it was going to be too much, that I wasn't going to be able to do it. But it was that moment where I said, you know what, no, I really should. I should try to do something more. So.
Absolutely. So I so appreciate that point, and really underscoring the importance of your pack, or your, right? It's like, wow, well, I guess if he's going to be the president, I may need to do a little bit more. Exactly. What a swift kick. Okay. And what a great question. Thanks for asking that question. Okay, so next question. What motivated you? Well, we sort of addressed that, but there's lots of different things that you could have done. What motivated you to choose Supreme Court or Superior Court judgeship specifically? Were you recruited? Were you encouraged, nudged by someone? Did you make the decision on your own? Sort of, how did you make that decision?
I talked to people about the different options there were, and I was interested in Superior Court. Although I have to say, I did not have a whole lot of state court experience. Most of my trial court experience was in federal court. But I like the idea of being able to participate and run trials, but also have writing. We had to deal with summary judgment motions to suppress. So it was, what appealed to me was the variety of work, and both civil and criminal, and the fact that I got to interact with people for trials, but also got to do some writing. So it really was a wonderful job. I really, really enjoyed it. It took me a while to sort of feel comfortable. It took me like 5 years, actually. But once I did, I really liked it. It was great.
Awesome. Okay, couple more questions here. This question says, how would you describe your judicial approach or style? And I think you touched on this a bit earlier, but it also says, how has your prior work and personal experiences informed that approach and style? So maybe you can expound a little bit more on what you've already given us on this point.
Yeah. So I would say that, I grew up in Peabody, one of very few people of color and even fewer Black girls in all of my classes. And frankly, I felt a bit invisible. Nobody was worried about me. It's not that I didn't have friends, I definitely did, but I wasn't necessarily noticed. And I sort of felt like I was just, there on my own. And frankly, I should point out that when I walk out of the courthouse, it's not like anybody knows who I am. I'm a Black woman that, and whatever that means to people in the street. So I spend a lot of my time feeling like I am not necessarily seen. So when I was a judge in the Superior Court, it was important to me that people who came before me knew that I saw them. And that went for pro se litigants, that went for criminal defendants. And, I feel like it was important to me to take the time to hear their case and make sure they understood that it was important to me. It was important to them. It was important to me, and they were going to get a fair hearing. So.
And that's so important, Chief Justice. It's so important that people feel seen and heard and respected, even in spaces that are supposed to facilitate justice. It's so critical and key. So I think highlighting a point, I know there's much more to your style, but I really appreciate you highlighting that that's sort of a bedrock of where you come from. A couple more, we're almost there. So this one I appreciate. I said we're going to circle back to your role as a mother. This question says, what advice would you have for those seeking a career in law while balancing that with their family and home responsibilities without sacrificing those roles? Or is it that there must be a sacrifice?
Yeah. I guess it depends on what you mean by sacrifice. I look back, I wasn't at every field trip. I wasn't able to do all of the things, that I might have wanted to do when the boys were growing up. And so I think in that way, there is a sacrifice. On the flip side, my boys got to see a mother who was working hard, and, that was their life. They had I wasn't there to pick them up necessarily. Somebody would be there. They knew that somebody would be there to pick them up, and they rolled with it. And so I think there's something to be said for doing what you think is important for your personal growth, and maybe not look at it as a sacrifice, but look at it as a benefit in some ways. But there's no way to do everything. There just isn't. I don't think. But on the other hand, there are a lot of different ways to do the job. There's a lot of different ways to be, a working mom.
And surely you can feel as though the work that you were doing was directly contributing to them and to a community and an environment that would be better for them, right? And many others like them. So you were, in some ways, your work now especially is benefiting in them. So you're showing up, but just in a different way, in a way that we so appreciate that you were willing to do, right? We so appreciate it. So I know that's a challenge for a lot of moms and dads, parents generally, but when the sacrifice is of public service, we so appreciate that you're willing to do it for us. Okay, two more. So this question says, first, thank you for being a trailblazer as a woman and as a person of color. And I reiterate that. Thank you for being who you are and taking on the roles you have. And it says, how can we attain even more diversity? And I will add to that in the legal profession generally and also on the bench.
So I think there are a lot of things that can be done. I think it's important for those who are in the position of seeking out outside counsel, make sure that you're asking about the diversity of the team that's going to be coming in. You know, make sure that if you're working in a law firm, make sure that the associates of color who are there have the opportunity to work on matters that that will give them some growth, some opportunities to grow in their profession. Encourage anybody who you're working with to show that you have confidence in them. I know that the places that I succeeded were the places where the person I was working for or working with had confidence in me and showed that they had confidence in me by giving me work that they thought I could do and having me rise to the occasion. And I just so appreciate having had that opportunity, and everybody doesn't necessarily get that opportunity. I didn't get that opportunity in every place that I was, but the places where I was and did, that's what made all the difference. So that's important, and that's something I try to do with the people I work with here.
So I want to just underscore what you are saying wholeheartedly, because that has been my experience. It perfectly stated, right? It's been my experience, and just want to push that for those who are leaders or employers and are in charge of the cultivation and development of people, that this is so key, right? We are much more responsive to inspiration and trust and empowerment than we are to fear and punishment and these other things. So I really appreciate you saying that, and I just want to add my amen to it wholeheartedly. Okay, our final question is an interesting one.
Okay.
Not that the others weren't interesting, but this one's a little different. So it says, at what point will you allow yourself to feel that you were able to make enough change from within the system? Is that a place you think you'll ever be able to get to?
So, you know, as a judge, judges in Massachusetts have a hard stop. They have to retire at age 70. Now, I will be candid, I just turned 55. So that's a long time to imagine being, you know, in this position. I'm not making any promises one way or the other. But I will have to stop at 70. I know that my one of my predecessors, Justice Jerry Hines, who has been a mentor to me, who was here when I got to the SJC, and I would not have come had she not done it first. I promise you that. If you look at her, she really did it in a great way. She was here making very important, you know, writing very important opinions that have pushed us forward, and retired at the age of 70, and is now doing really important things outside of the court, do as a judge, and, you know, being able to be an advocate for different causes. And so she did some work, a lot of work inside the system, and now she's doing work outside the system, and that's a pretty cool way to do it.
Yeah, and I hope that you'll follow in her footsteps. She is absolutely delightful, and we are so appreciative that even past retirement from the bench, she continues to be present, so that we can benefit from all that she is and all that she's knows, all the wisdom that she's willing to impart on everyone that she encounters. Okay, so that is the entirety of our questions. Thank you so much, Chief Justice, for spending this time with us. It's been amazing. So I am going to turn it over to, I think, Yvonne, that's going to come in and give us some closing remarks. Is that correct?
I'm stepping in for Yvonne. It's Danielle back here, but I want to thank you both so much, Courtney and Chief Justice Budd, for such a fantastic and candid conversation. I know I truly enjoyed hearing about the collaborativeness of the judiciary system under your leadership, and you noting the importance of everyone that comes before you being seen. I really liked that. I know I look forward to continuing to follow both of your careers as you inspire and lead the community. And speaking of inspiring women, I just want to note that early bird rates for our 2022 Pinnacle Awards are available until November 26th. So join us in January as we celebrate the powerful women who are changing Greater Boston for the better. Also on November 9th, we'll be hosting our first back in person Women's Network event where we'll hear from a local chef and restaurant owner, Karen Akunowitz, and get to check out her new restaurant in Southie, Bar Volpe. You can learn all about all these events and more at bostonchamber.com. Once again, a huge thank you to both you, Chief Justice and Courtney, and our sponsor, PwC. I hope that you guys have a fantastic day and weekend, and I hope to see everybody again in November. Thanks so much.
Thank you.